Following on from my recent video on glue-only end grain joints, I'm going to share with you my experience of the effects over time on glue-only joints in real-world situations. One highly structural, a chair, and the other predominantly decorative, a clock. Let's start with the clock, which I designed 48 years ago and sold in small batches. Here's the original prototype made in 1972. Now, in Mr. Sullivan's myth-challenging video on mitre joints, in which he says a mitre is effectively end grain, he states that it's difficult to disprove that seasonal wood movement destroys the joint over time, and that he would have to do hundreds of tests and be around in 50 years to draw a conclusion. He then shows images of short mitres viewed from the outside of the mitre joint, so you can't really see what's going on inside. Well, with respect to Mr. Sullivan, I think most gallery owners are familiar with mitred picture frames opening up on the inside of a long joint within a matter of months. So I'm not going to waste the viewer's time in pursuing the mitre myth theme, other than to say that a fairly reliable observation of the behaviour of wood over centuries is that it shrinks and expands across the grain but not in length. And this is why the mitre joint opens up from the inside, as the long grain fibres remain constant in length. And I'll put it out there that it has a peeling effect on the glue line in practical terms. So, starting with my chair, which is made of ash, a timber which combines strength with rigidity, the wood joints are both side and end grain glue only joints and rely on a continuation of side grain gluing by the interlocking bricked construction. Now, this is a traditional technique used mainly in veneered serpentine chest fronts, but I have pushed the boundaries in making it structural thanks to modern glues which are more permanent than the old ones. The seat fingers, however, would not last 5 minutes if they were just glue-only butt joints, so they are domino jointed to achieve the fibre overlap necessary for a load-bearing joint. Now, it's stood up well without any significant movement or joint failure for 11 years now. And I made a video a few years ago on this chair. Moving on to my clock design, it demonstrates side grain bonding of some fairly hefty cuboids of pine. So I've just glued them together. Let's look at a short clip showing one of these clocks being made by me during my stay in Australia a few years ago and using Australian blackwood. So hello to my Australian friends. Now, I should add that when I first designed this clock in 1972, I contacted the Timber Research and Development Association in the UK, asking them if they thought the glue joints would hold up over time, considering the massive sections that I'd used. But I didn't actually get a definitive answer. And I would have expected some movement and maybe even cracks. Not along the glue line, of course. Now, add to this the polyurethane lacquer I used. A general rule is lacquer or varnish is little more than 60% impervious. So to a degree, the lacquer helps reduce timber movement. And the only evident movement in, 48 years, can barely be felt and certainly not seen. So, to sum up, a modern glue holds up well over time if the nature of wood shrinking and expanding is respected, and of course timbers vary. and the rule of overlapping long fibres must be observed in stress situations. A chair probably has more stresses thrown at it than any other wooden artefact, although I wouldn't fancy sailing in a wooden boat that I designed around Cape Horn. Well, we can thank Mr. Sullivan that woodworkers are at last beginning to question how they make things. And as a designer, maker and educator, I welcome this, because for far too long traditional methods have been flogged to death, especially on YouTube, without question. But suddenly myths are being busted, experts prove wrong. In fact, what is the myth? I find it very hard to get my head around that all end grain gluing is bad. And who are the experts who are putting out this information, when not long ago the USA alongside the UK led the world in pushing the boundaries of art, furniture and woodworking design? Thanks for watching.